Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel, thank you. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Perfect World based on novel. So let's start. 2 days and 2 nights later, Shahao made it through. The pain he felt began to weaken. He absorbed the mysterious medicinal effects and got used to this type of refinement. This is a miracle. Yun11 said. Shahao ate a total of more than 150 stalks of blood soul grass, exceeding the record of the past exceptional talents, and he was still unharmed, able to survive. He silently comprehended. Then, he asked Yun11 to attack him with symbols so he could examine if it really was effective. The magical force attacking me has been weakened. A day and night later, Shahao increased his total to 200 stalks, and that was when danger finally appeared. His body began to crack, and his soul shone, as if it was going to be burned away. He released a low roar. The true primordial record was engraved with his mind, and the 10,000 spirit diagram emerged. He covered his body with the true record's bone texts, and the 10,000 spirit diagram symbols. His body was covered in blood, cracking and then healing. This type of medicinal characteristics brought races apart from the ape demons great harm after all. It was difficult to endure. This time, Shahao didn't act rashly. He sat there to adjust his body, recovering himself to his optimal state. Half a day later, he began to test the results. He had Yun11 attack him, success. Shahao was excited. The first attack was ineffective against him, completely neutralized. The magical force was dissolved. However, this was not true for the second attack. Things were returned to normal. The magical force entered his body. He sat there, adjusting his breathing and recovered for a period of time. Then, he tested things out again. The results were the same. The first wave of magical force was ignored, unable to break through his defenses, but when the second wave began, it could enter again. This Yun11 was shocked. He unexpectedly really obtained this type of ability. It was too heaven-defying. If news of this got out, it would definitely leave the great sects shaken. So this is all it is capable of. Still unable to reach the ape demon's level. Shahao said to himself. Despite this being the case, he was still satisfied. Just the first wave of magical force being ineffective was already enough to let him do many things. 2 days later, Shahao and Yun11 raised their heads. They saw that a group of vicious birds were circling about in the air, causing them to release grave expressions. They were still unable to escape them in the end. It was still the creatures from the 100-bird mercenary group, and the leaders were still that golden crow and firecloud sparrow. They flew in circles high up in the skies, and then they headed in this direction. This group of demonic birds are too sharp, still able to find us in the end. Shahao sighed softly. They could only continue forward right now. They chose a dangerous place where they could stir up a few true deity-level creatures to deal with the 100-bird mercenary group's creatures. There are 2 others. Other than this feature, however, they weren't much different from humans. War race, it's them. Yunshi's eyes became cold. She knew that of the inheritances attacking the celestial race this time, the war race was definitely the main force, because these 2 clans opposed each other like water and fire. Is the war race strong? Shahao asked. In the archaic era, they were ranked within the 10 great races, and called the War Emperor clan. They were extremely glorious, and all those under the heavens respected them, said Yun11. Shahao was shocked. To be called an emperor race or clan was definitely an unimaginable glory. Back then, the celestial race had 6 individuals that evolved into unmatched celestials, and only then did they obtain this type of title. What kind of background did the war race have back then? Regardless, they were definitely powerful. This is not good. They discovered us. Shahao frowned. The 100-bird mercenaries weren't known for their fighting prowess, but if it was strictly pursuit, they were definitely one of the best in the demon province. They originally got them off their trail a long time ago, but it was because of this group that they were found again. Finally found you. The one that spoke was not the golden crow or firecloud sparrow, but instead the middle-aged man from the war race that sat on a vicious bird's back. The heaven's mandate stone is on your body. The other youngster also spoke. His temperament was unordinary. Black hair scattered about. His eyes were bright. He stared at Yun11, continuously nodding his head as he did so. War race, you all are playing with fire. When my clan's ancient ancestor revives, you all will have to face the consequences. Un11 said coldly, who can really say what the future holds? Even if that old celestial really does survive, there will still be others to stop him. The young war race genius smiled and shook his head. He then said, you already merged with the heaven's mandate stone. If it is forcefully extracted, then that strange stone's effects will sharply decline. It really is a headache-inducing matter. There was an evil aura to him. The corner of his lips tilted upwards, and a golden radiance flashed in his eyes. How about you just marry into my war race? Keep dreaming. Un11 only had these 2 words for him. Her figure was graceful and her hair soft. Her eyes were quick-witted. Her charm was matchless, as if she was a goddess that walked out from a painting. She was exceptionally beautiful and could move the hearts of many. I feel like it's not that bad of a choice. Marrying into my war race can still be considered an appropriate match. The young man said calmly, capture them. At this moment, the middle-aged man on the golden crow's back spoke in an incomparably imposing manner. It's good that there aren't any true deities. Shahao said to himself. However, this was still quite terrifying. If he faced them head-on, he would definitely fall. The other party had too many experts. However, he had another chance to fight. He wanted to see the extent of this so-called magical force immunity. Which one do you want dead? Shahao was quite brash, asking Un11 to point at one, not understanding the difference between life and death. In the skies, the group of vicious birds and 2 war race experts all revealed grins of anger. Kill the war race. Un11 said, blurting out without thinking. The 2 sides had been enemies for many generations. Kill us. The war race youngster raised his head and roared with laughter. His eyes carried coldness and killing intent. I won't kill you and instead bring you back as a wife for my race. The so-called man into sky should just be carried out in my war race. Just a toad that wants to eat phoenix meat. Just go somewhere cool if you want to act all cool. Shahao ridiculed, shooting them a look of disdain while standing on this barren earth. He had one of Yunshi's earrings on him, so from a certain perspective, he was quite intimately related to Un11, because for the celestial race, that earring contained significant meaning. The war race middle-aged expert's face remained unchanged. He felt that it was below his dignity to argue with Shahao, because their race had previously been called the War Emperor clan, one of the higher realm's inheritances, most distinguished races. The eyes of the young genius from the war race became treacherous. What kind of thing are you? The celestial race, war race are both names that had shaken the 3,000 provinces and known as emperor clans. The entire world respects us. Even someone like you dares to speak here. The blood plains were rather desolate. There were all types of ruined weapons and skeletal remains. There was also mists curling about, making this place look terrifying and mysterious. Shahao revealed a slight sneer from his mouth, mocking, I am nothing much, but in my eyes, someone like you who is the so-called genius of the War Emperor clan in front of my eyes is nothing more than chicken shit. When the war race youngster heard this, divine light immediately erupted within his eyes. The purple patterns between his brows transformed and glistened brilliantly, becoming the color of blood. Scarlet multicolored light erupted and killing energy surged. Courting death. The middle-aged man spat out these 2 words. He released a large hand that flickered with gemstone-like luster and grabbed over. Shahao and Un11 shifted sideways at the same time, avoiding this attack. This is your so-called heart like steel, unmoving like a mountain. In my opinion, you are just showing off to a disciple. When you really do make a move, it only amounts to this much. Shahao taunted. Then, he pointed at the experts of the 100-bird mercenary group. You birdmen should hurry and come over too. I'm going to stew all of you together. In the sky, the group of vicious birds cried out. Feathers shone brilliantly, and many of them were surrounded by divine flames. They were extremely powerful. Ice-cold radiance seeped out from their eyes as they stared at him. He is just a dead person, there is no reason to pay him any attention. He'll be dead soon anyway. The middle-aged war race expert said. He then looked at Un11. She was the real target this time. If they could capture her and have her marry into the war race. We will definitely send invitations to your clan's important figures, inviting them to participate. What do you think? Yunshi's pretty face turned ice cold, and she was fuming with anger inwardly. From her perspective, this was the same as a type of humiliation, and even more so a direct slap to the celestial race's faces. Now that the other party spoke about such a thing, how could she endure this? Help me, she said softly. Shahao nodded and said, don't worry. Suddenly, he felt as if something wasn't right. The resplendent symbols circulated about, but unexpectedly failed to injure that youth, and on the contrary, the other party shot straight for him. When he approached the world within the palm, he was unexpectedly completely unhindered. The divine ability was ineffective. He quickly discovered what was wrong. The symbols in his large hand became dim, and the world within the palm was destroyed. This youth's fist smashed over. In that instant, the youth's palm collided with his own, and then a string of blood shot high into the air. Shahao packed that fist with as much power as he could. All of his strength erupted. This was a strike that represented the peak of his power. This fist not only had the Kuan-Peng technique, it also carried the reincarnation precious technique, and even more so the Lightning Emperor's divine ability. It all merged together. The divine might was world-shocking. Others might not be able to see through it, but that didn't mean that this deadly strike wasn't frightening. The war race expert cried out loudly. His great hand ruptured, and then crumpled apart inch by inch. A bloody mist pervaded the air. No one foresaw things would develop like this. The war race divine flame realm expert's entire arm was splitting and crumbling apart. Blood was everywhere as it quickly disappeared. He was shocked, because the third type of symbols then appeared, wreaking havoc within his body. It was actually a Kuan-Peng, leaving him in complete disbelief. In that instant, he thought of many things. He had also heard that the unmatched Kuan-Peng technique had landed in the lower realm, and that a youth obtained it. He wanted to say something, but he didn't have the time to do so, because the deadliest attack arrived. Shahao erupted with power. He formed a fist imprint. It was as if the stars in the sky all moved, terrifying to the extreme. His head of hair flew about chaotically, and his pupils were like a sun as he unleashed a great slaughter. An attack that relied on his physical strength, this was actually his most tyrannical attack right now. It was because the war race expert was, in the end, still a deity. Even though his magical force was ineffective against Shahao, he could still defend himself inwardly against the three great precious techniques. When one's cultivation realm was high, it decided everything. However, the so-called balance was destroyed by Shahao's flesh. He formed a fist imprint, and like a heavenly emperor, he attacked ferociously. Each time his fist made contact with flesh, blood would appear. The war race expert's symbols were ineffective. When used on Shahao's flesh, they were all neutralized, unable to stop him. This was a true struggle of the flesh. He had no choice. At this moment, he trembled. Even though he was a deity, his flesh wasn't as powerful as his opponent's. One of his arms had long been blasted to pieces, so right now, he was truly in a difficult situation. In that instant, Shahao stamped down from the sky, forcibly trampling that war race expert's head to pieces. Blood and brain matter splattered in all directions. It was too fast. Who would have expected that a deity would be killed by a supreme expert in an instant? It was too late to save him even if they wanted to. Golden light shone resplendently. The 100-bird mercenary race's leader, the golden crow, spread its wings and roared. Its entire body was covered in symbols and flames that wrapped around Shahao to burn him to ashes. It was because it was extremely close. The war race expert was right on its back, so its attack immediately landed on Shahao's body. However, it miscalculated. The symbols were ineffective, and the magical force dispersed in the void, unable to harm Shahao. The attacks of the other vicious birds rushed over as well, but a similar situation appeared. I need to seize this moment. Shahao was inwardly anxious. He could only endure a single wave of attacks, because the time frame was short and limited. The magic immunity was about to become ineffective. The Golden Crows were definitely a powerful race. Their precious technique was astonishing, and their magical force was up there in the rankings, yet one of them was actually killed like this. They wanted to save it, but it was too late. Shahao pointed at the space between the Golden Crows, and then with a jump, he rushed at the Firecloud Sparrow. It was the vice leader. The Firecloud Sparrow was extremely powerful. Its entire body was covered in crimson symbols. Fiery light surged, burning the void until it became indistinct. It was incomparably shocked. The golden crow was unexpectedly killed. When it saw Shahao slaughtering over now, it instinctively felt fear. This youth was simply like a devil king, killing two great experts in the blink of an eye. Could it even defend itself from him? In this brief moment of hesitation, Shahao already arrived. It was greatly alarmed. No. The war race youngster on the Firecloud Sparrow's back screamed, his eyes full of fear. Unilevin was shocked. This youth was just too valiant and daring, simply like a heavenly deity that was descending onto this world. He was actually weaving between the attacks of deities, killing two great experts while doing so. It left her absolutely stunned. At that moment, she thought of too much. Her mind was trembling, and she said to herself, heaven-warping martial talent, there was actually someone so close to this saying, someone who really is this extraordinary. The scene before her eyes caused Unilevin to inadvertently think of that lower realm youth. The two bore a remarkable resemblance. Removing the heads of enemies in an army was incredibly easy. He really did have a heaven-warping nature. Back then, Shahao had rebuked heaven and earth in front of the Kuan-Peng nest. Standing on that Dao platform, fighting viciously against experts from all directions. He swept thought everyone around him, and no one was his opponent. They were all at the spiritual transformation realm, but not even supreme experts could kill him. Meanwhile, the youth in front of her also had this type of temperament, killing deities in such a domineering manner. It was incredibly dazzling. He had an unrivaled confidence, and he naturally exuded divine might. Let's go. Shahao swooped down. He carried that young genius from the war race while running towards Unilevin, bringing her with him to escape. In the sky, the Firecloud Sparrow was incredibly shocked. This youth could kill their leader and kill that war race expert, so he was definitely terrifyingly powerful. Why was he now running away? As for the other vicious birds, they were all stunned as well. That youth's performance could be considered terrifying to the extreme, simply like a demon. He killed the powerful golden crow in an instant. In addition, he casually killed several other vicious birds as well, leaving them horrified, chase after them. The Firecloud Sparrow and other divine birds weren't normal. They immediately realized the other party didn't dare to fight continuously, so he likely felt like he couldn't win. Soon after, they understood that the other party had a special method, but couldn't use it for an extended amount of time. He was now no longer as ferocious, so it was a good opportunity to eliminate him. I don't mind killing a few more of you. Those that stop me will all die. Shahao shouted. Immediately afterwards, they were stupefied. While pulling Unilevin with him, he displayed the earth shrinking into inches great divine ability. After rushing out a short distance, he entered the great earth, disappearing beneath the ground and disappearing without a trace. The group of vicious birds spread their wings, bombarding the ancient battlefield with their most ferocious attacks. They all opened their beaks to shoot out symbols, and some of them even brandished their divine wings to tear apart the great earth. However, this was completely useless. Even though they tore open the ground, they still couldn't find Shahao. The earth shrinking into inches technique was the human race's great divine ability, known as having one of the world's greatest speeds. When one grasped it, one could move through the skies above or the earth below. When refined to its limit, one could even travel to the sun or moon, roaming through the universe. The 100-bird mercenary group's people were furious, but they couldn't do anything about it. Shahao and the celestial race's young lady entered the ground, thus disappearing without a trace. They were birds, and as such were unsuitable to moving through the earth. Next time, bring someone who can use earth movement secret techniques. The Firecloud Sparrow said hatefully. The losses this time were too severe. It was too difficult to explain things to the delegation head. Only after a long time had passed did Shahao and Unilevin rush out from underground. They brought an earthen-colored haze with them as they emerged on the surface of the ground again. The blood plains have been locked down by restrictions. Even the underground terrain was affected. Unilevin frowned. They only traveled 800 li, but they were already feeling great strain. This ancient battlefield covered an area of at least 50,000 li. They set out towards its depths. What they needed to do right now was not head for Heaven Province, but instead stall for time and await rescue. Once celestial race's ancient ancestor, who personally created their ancient glory, revived, the situation would completely change. The old celestial's aura devoured mountains and rivers. In the past, his might trembled the 3,000 provinces. His power shocked the higher realms. Let's get some rest. Not a single blade of grass grew here. It was quiet and noiseless. Fleeing for their lives should be an extremely bitter and worrying matter, but with Shahao here, this wasn't the case at all. He was full of energy and curiosity towards the ancient battlefield. Right now, his mood was even more excellent as he dealt with that golden crow, plucking its feathers, butchering and cleaning it. His movements were smooth and practiced. Yun 11 was completely speechless, as she watched from the side. This fella's mind really was a bit too unusual, right? After being chased to this point where a true deity might show up at any moment, he even had the nerve to cook a meal. It's a good thing I brought so much spiritual spring and condiments. It really is good to be prepared just in case. Shahao said to himself, appearing extremely satisfied. Soon after, he properly cleaned up the golden crow and propped it up. He used his Dao flame to start cooking it. He then brought out the bone cauldron to even prepare some soup. When the war race young genius was tossed out, upon seeing this scene, he was immediately terrified. What kind of scene was this? The divine-level golden crow was propped up and roasted to a golden state. Fragrance wafted outwards, and grease continuously trickled downwards, releasing kai-kai sounds as it landed on the flames. How could the war race young genius not be dumbstruck? Then, his fine hairs all stood on end. This fella was just too savage. Killing the enemy was one thing, but he was even going to eat it. You should start speaking. How many experts did you invite out this time? How many heavenly deities and true deities? What other mercenary groups are going to appear? Shahao roasted the golden crow while casually interrogating him. He wanted to obtain some valuable information. I don't know. The war race youngster's voice trembled. What formidable individuals are there among the war race's younger generation? Shahao asked. He didn't believe that the so-called genius in front of him represented the most powerful youngsters of this race. My race's younger generation has 3 great war kings. If any of them leave the clan, they would become great and influential individuals. They are powerful to the point of being immeasurable. Shahao nodded. This was what made sense. The glorious war race was one of the emperor clans of the old world, so how could they not have any truly outstanding youth? This person in front of him was just too inferior. Your war race has 3 war kings that are comparatively outstanding. Why don't they dare call themselves war emperors? Shahao mocked. There is a legend that they might exist. The face of the youth in front of him turned white. After some hesitation, he replied like this, what? Shahao was shocked. He was just randomly asking, but there was actually this piece of news. I don't know whether it really exists, but there has always been a legend that in this world, my war race might have someone who can obtain the title of young war emperor. What did this title represent? It was self-evident. Shahao asked him for the details. Within the war race, only the most dazzling disciples that exceeded the youth of past generations could obtain the title of war emperor. Since the ancient past, there were only a few individuals from the war race who were able to obtain the title of war emperor. It was just too small of a number. In addition, the past individuals were pretty much all concentrated in the archaic era, and it was precisely them that established the unmatched glory of granting their clan the name of War Emperor race. Another War Emperor appeared in this world. Yunshi's head of purple hair was shiny and soft. Her large eyes were like gemstones, containing a spirituality and radiance. Her fine nose was tall and straight, her red lips small and bright. There was a suffocating type of beauty to her appearance. When she heard Shahao's words, she felt a wave of speechlessness. She wasn't someone who would become an intimate friend like this. She never even had this type of interest. What kind of cultivators acted like this? The reason she was absent-minded just now was because she thought a few past events. There had been a youth who, in the 100 Shattering Mountains, had an enormous bag, and inside were pots, ladles, plates, and all types of seasonings. He had been a huge laughingstock at the entrance. Later on, as expected, That fella was a foodie, eating anything from things that flew in the sky to what ran on the earth, even including the true supreme water. He even bit a person's ear. Yun immediately felt a wave of suspicions. Back then, that youth wrestled with her, biting her snow-white and sparkling earlobe. Was it for the sake of having a taste, to eat her? When her thoughts returned to reality, she accepted the golden roasted wing, watching as it gushed with multicolored brilliance. Spiritual essence poured everywhere. She felt as if this scene was more and more familiar, as if it had all happened before. Yun gathered her beautiful hair. Her eyes were flowing with radiance as she looked at the youth in front of her. Why did he also have this type of character, this love for food? As well as carrying all types of seasoning with him. It was just too similar to that person. Moreover, both individuals were extremely self-confident, radiant and dazzling. When fighting a great battle against enemies, they were without any fear. There was a type of unrivaled style to them. It was too similar. Yun trembled inwardly. Her expression was a bit distracted as she stared at the youth in front of her. Could it be the same person? She didn't dare believe this. That person should have been buried in the great wasteland of the lower realm. However, there was doubt in her heart. She was extremely unwilling to accept this and wanted to test him out. She raised her slim little white hands towards Shahao's head of pitch-black hair. At that moment, Yun made an extremely brazen move. That pure white jade hand unexpectedly grabbed Shahao's ear, and then she tugged on it with a bit of force. "Who are you?" she asked softly, with a somewhat alluring voice. She stared into Shahao's eyes to peer into his soul. Shahao was stunned. This elegant and beautiful beauty, who the younger generation of the archaic divine mountains held as their goddess, actually took the initiative to frivolously touch his ear. Yunxi's beautiful purple hair fell downwards. Her long eyelashes trembled lightly, and her large eyes moved about. Her sparkling white and charming face blushed, because this action really was a bit too daring. Shahao quickly responded, and extremely naturally, he reached out an arm to grab Yunxi's small waist, pulling her closer. He could smell an extremely heart-moving fragrance. His movements were smooth and easy like that of an experienced individual. He carried this unmatched beauty in his arms, and then he tilted up her chin to stare into her eyes with an extremely concentrated expression. Yunxi's face immediately became red. Her peerless beauty carried humiliation and anger. She felt that no matter how she looked at it, this fella looked like someone who was going to take liberties with her. However, she felt that this was her fault as well, because her movements seemed to exude a rather ambiguous signal, as if she was trying to entice him. Only, this fella was too fast, acting without any delay and extremely naturally. Just like that, her soft and beautiful waist was wrapped around. His arms were warm and forceful. Shahao supported her beautiful chin, and then while acting like a profound thinker, he said, "I must thank the heavens for our meeting. This is a heaven-decided predestined affinity." Yun immediately felt lightheaded. What in the world was going on? She felt like the misunderstanding was going too far. This wasn't that person, and she was imagining the wildest things. This fella was too smug, and his smile was a bit lowly. Yun quickly slapped away Shahao's hand that was supporting her chin. She didn't want to be harassed like this. This type of position was too intimate. Even though this person saved her life, he still couldn't act randomly. Don't be so doubtful. Our meeting in the Blood Plains was definitely the heavens arrangement. Shahao held her long and slender body, feeling a sense of softness, as well as a delicate fragrance only young girls had. He had a completely undaunted appearance. "I thought you were someone else." Yun was humiliated and angry. She struggled fiercely, slapping at that hand to make him let go. She was extremely beautiful. Her purple hair scattered downwards, shiny like silk fabric. Her large eyes were like limpid autumn waters. At this moment, she wrinkled her nose. This type of annoyed appearance had its own type of charm that would leave others stupefied. Shahao didn't let go, continuing to hold her small waist. His other hand reached towards her beautiful hair, and then it lightly touched her beautiful ear. Yun was greatly alarmed. This fella's movements were too fast and unbridled. He was actually so daring. She quickly moved out of the way. Even though she could only blame herself, suspecting that the person from the lower realm didn't die, which lead to this type of impulsive test, the results really were too terrible. Unileven retreated backwards, but her body trembled, almost like a spasm. However, the unexpected happened. The powerful precious technique and resplendent symbols were completely useless against Shahao's body. They all disappeared into nothing. Unileven was shocked, and then she realized what had happened. This damn magical force immunity. At this critical moment, the strange ability the other party obtained automatically activated, defending against the symbols and ruining her symbols and magical force. When it activated just now, it truly left her between laughter and tears. She felt that this was a bit absurd, but at the same time she was embarrassed to the extreme. Let go. Her face was extremely red, as she shouted in a low voice. Shahao was confused. While carrying her slender waist, he asked, why? Unileven was going mad. He was still asking why. This was definitely done on purpose. However, after thinking about her own recklessness, an almost intentional provocation, she then felt a bit in the wrong. You misunderstood. Her body was extremely fine. At this moment, it erupted with multicolored light. Her body was pure white and sparkling, holy and otherworldly. There was an inviolable charm to her, as if she was a goddess that fell into the world of mortals. Shahao's smile was brilliant. As if he obtained some type of inspiration, he tugged at her sparkling ear, and then in the end, he let her go and said, all right, a beautiful misunderstanding. I hope next time, it is even more dazzling. What next time? Unileven had the urge to grind her teeth, to bite him. I thought you were someone else. You are extremely similar to an old friend of mine. Unileven explained. She calmed herself down and fixed her beautiful hair. She then backed up more than 10 steps, truly fearing that he would bear hug her again. Where is he? Is he my rival in love? Tell him to bring it on. I will definitely defeat him with a single slap. Shahao acted carkily. Unileven was speechless. Her impression of this youth when they first met was incredibly good, but after associating with him more and more, she found that this fellow really was too much. He already died in the lower realm. That really is a rather sorrowful thing. However, don't you feel that our meeting and travel together have made things more interesting? Shahao laughed and said. Unileven turned around. If this was not her life-saving benefactor, she would have definitely showed him her expression. I feel that just when Shahao was going to say something, he was directly cut off by Unileven. Her pearly white teeth grinding together, as she said with great anger, we should go on our way. Sigh, it truly makes one feel sad. Shahao shook his head. He grabbed a golden crow wing and then began to feast on it. His entire mouth flowed with divine multicolored light. Rich fragrance wafted through the air. He also hinted for Unileven to go ahead, and not be too polite. You are so powerful, why are you just a foodie? Unileven truly couldn't hold herself back, and spoke like this. The war race youngster opened his mouth, but he didn't know what was proper to say. He cursed silently. This fella failed in trying to toy with the celestial race beauty, and was now taking it out on him. It was just too disgraceful. Shahao opened a jar of wine and hinted towards Unileven, inviting her to drink. I won't drink. Unileven shook her head. It truly makes one laden with grief, Shahao said. He gulped down the alcohol, and then he ate large mouthfuls of the golden crow meat. Soon after, his body erupted with dazzling radiance. This was the embodiment of the innate essence being too rich. He sat down and began to refine the food, treating a few of the injuries left over from before to quickly recover himself to his peak state. His appearance was majestic. Every inch of his flesh released divine multicolored light that was brilliant like immortal gold. His flesh was perfect and powerful to the extreme. Let's go. When he stood up again, Shahao recovered his calm exterior. He looked at Unileven and then called out to her for them to continue moving. I'm sorry. Before, I mistook you for someone else, Unileven explained. Don't you feel that this meeting is quite amazing? We can run into each other, encounter each other, but cannot miss this chance. Shahao seriously said. You really don't have any sense of shame. Unileven was annoyed. All right, let's go on our way. After speaking up to this point, Shahao turned around in an unhurried manner. He then pointed outwards, killing War Race's young expert before walking into the depths of the battlefield. At this moment, he recovered his decisiveness, no longer acting frivolously. There was an oppressive and heroic nature to his appearance. Unileven stared blankly for a moment. She always felt that this person was rather strange. She seemed to have heard a sigh, one that contained a bit of regret. Shahal walked forward with large steps. He thought of many things, but in the end, he still didn't reveal his identity. He only sighed inwardly. When Unileven heard this strange light sigh, she felt a bit confused. Why would he suddenly start talking to himself? Unileven, what kind of conditions does the celestial race have for marriage? Shahal put away his grave appearance and began to laugh again. Unileven was stupefied. What exactly was this fella thinking? The changes were too sudden to the extent where she was a bit lost. What are you trying to say? She asked while taking a few steps back. If I go to your celestial race and ask for marriage, do you think I'll have to live with the wife's family? I really don't want that. Shahal said while laughing. What are you randomly spouting? Yunshi's face went red. She stared at him hatefully. This fella truly left others feeling without choice, shooting his mouth like this. Unileven, let's travel the world together. How boring is it to return to the clan? Cultivating in one place bitterly is too dry and dull. True experts need to roam the world and produce accomplishments through battle, Shahal urged. Unileven directly shook her head. She felt that this fella was too ridiculous. Was he playing with her again? Sigh, the number one expert since the beginning of time is right in front of you, but you aren't asking him for guidance. You will regret it, you know. Unileven immediately laughed after hearing this. Are you willing to join my celestial race? With your aptitude, you can study under a heavenly deity. Your future accomplishments will be limitless. What is so great about a heavenly deity? Shahal shot out a look of contempt. I fear that if I go, the entire celestial race will be startled and make things difficult for me. You really are narcissistic. Unileven couldn't take it any longer. She rolled her eyes. The so-called great 10 races of the higher realms were just glorious times of the past. The man in front of you will definitely rise up, becoming an emperor clan himself, becoming a heavenly emperor by relying on himself. You should not miss out on this opportunity. Shahal teased. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.